Hello, Jesse.
Hi, Alan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So, in person this time around,
Indeed.
I've got some follow up questions.
Excellent.
So, let's dig in, shall we?
Please.
So, I was reflecting on our past conversation, and it made me realize that basically, in a very reduced form, your pitch as a company or as a cryptocurrency is that you do certain things better than any other cryptocurrency out there. So it's like the classical, marketing spiel. Like we've got the best product. Um, is that a fair characterization?
We've got the fastest car. Yeah.
Yeah, you got the fastest car. So the thing is, though, that the dimensions where you score the fastest are a bit more abstract than the speed of a car. There are things like the scalability and that kind of stuff. So offline, we got start talking about how do those terms, how do they register with other people? How do they conceptualize them? And so, is there anything there that you want to talk about?
I think scalability translates in the end not so much to user experience. I mean, to some
But
degree also.
before we go into scalability, what are the dimensions that you believe that you have the fastest car?
Scalable privacy, which in my eyes is one feature, not two, but you could view scalable privacy as scalability plus privacy and post quantum security. Um, Now, post quantum security is a binary variable. You either have it or you don't.
Mhm.
And once you have it, it's not like you're more post quantum secure than another construction. There is you could ensure that the cost of attack is greater even when it's compute even when that attack is performed on a quantum computer. But basically, after the cost of attack is intractable, we don't care anymore. And
That
so
makes
it's
sense.
basically a binary dimension. Scalable privacy is not even one dimension, not even one continuous dimension, but a whole bunch of fuzzy dimensions. Privacy itself is multifaceted. You could have um, confidentiality of transactions, but then there's also is your network profile, the speed at which you collect packages and send them out, and the length of those packages. Does that stand out from other nodes on the internet, let alone on the Neptune protocol or blockchain protocol? That's another dimension of privacy that you could take into account, and we don't. We focus only on-chain privacy. And so it's an acceptable trade-off from our point of view because we can't solve all the problems at the same time that your network traffic profile
Of course.
identifies you as a user of Neptune.
And so, if I think about some of the dimensions that I've heard people talk about in the crypto space more generally, then one thing that often comes up is decentralization. This blockchain might be faster, but it's not decentralized. So you've not mentioned that.
I think decentralization is downstream from scalability. If you characterize, as we do, scalability as having a low or negligible cost of running a full node, then in order to get to decentralization, scalability is a prerequisite. It's not enough though, because you could have a centralized foundation in charge of updating the protocol, and the protocol might be technically supportive of scalability, but if there's a centralized governor, then it's not decentralized. On the other hand, if the cryptocurrency project does not have a centralized governor, but it also doesn't have the technology that makes it scalable, then it, you don't qualify as decentralized either, because it's very difficult to use the protocol.
And how is Neptune approaching this?
We do have scalability as a technical feature, and moreover, after the protocol is launched, the company developing Neptune will dissolve. And if it so turns out that there are necessary changes, it's up to the internet to implement them after we've left. That's because we think money is a very important thing, and no one person should be in charge.
And do you have a practical example of maybe another cryptocurrency where scalability is getting in the way of decentralization?
I think Ethereum, sad to say, is following that path. I don't think Ethereum is decentralized. You have a handful of supercomputer clusters that are running full nodes, and everyone else is asking that handful of full nodes about the current state of the blockchain. Um, it's one subpoena away from censorship or dystopian centralized control over the currency.
And contrast that with Bitcoin, for instance.
Yeah, I don't think Bitcoin is one subpoena away, because it's a lot easier to run a Bitcoin full node. I'm running one on my Raspberry Pi. It The Raspberry Pi from time to time overheats, but that's the problem I'm dealing with. I just need to put it in a well ventilated area and it works. Um, if I were to try to attack Bitcoin from the point of view of a state, I would probably go after the developers, which itself is a ill-defined group of probably mostly identifiable individuals. But then you also need the legal context to go after them. And in the end, they're just publishing open source code. There's no law on any books that allow you to go after open source developers.
Let's talk about full nodes. Why would anyone run a full node?
Because without a full node, you're trusting someone else about the current state of the blockchain. And so if you receive money and you're untrustworthy to your counterparty as to whether they really sent it, because if you trust them, then who cares, right? You don't even need money. Just record the debt in your head, or in some kind of protocol that you both agree on. The whole point of verifying, the whole point of using money in the first place, is to verify them in a context of mutual distrust. And so if you're not running a full node, you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. You're distrusting your business partner, but you are trusting someone else who's running a full node, who claims to be running a full node. Doesn't make too much sense.
But isn't that also something that in practice just becomes binary? Because as long as you trust, let's say the last couple of blocks, and everyone's pretty much trusting the last couple of blocks, then in practice it just never is a problem.
How do you know it is the last couple of blocks? Or how do you know it's the last couple of blocks that everyone else sees?
But how does Bitcoin get by? Because they not everyone's running a full node that's using Bitcoin.
That's true, but the number of full nodes that are running Bitcoin is a lot larger than all the other cryptocurrencies combined. And if you sample randomly a node from the Bitcoin network, you have a high degree of independence from your business counterpart.
Interesting. So there's people that participate in Bitcoin that just interact through their own full node, just to be sure that they've got the entire thing on there.
Absolutely. And if you're a merchant, I would highly recommend doing that. If you're just a speculator hoping to pocket some extra riches from the cryptocurrency
Okay.
boom, then you can get away
So
with
so you're
trusting
pointing at a
funds.
risk. Can you make that risk a bit more concrete for people like me that don't quite
You
understand?
sell a TV, you verify the transaction, and you allow the person to exit your shop with the TV. And then when you try to download your cryptocurrency from your point of sale terminal, you realize that you were actually on the wrong chain and you never received the funds to begin with.
And the wrong chain in the case of Bitcoin is what? Is there some
It's a
fork?
fork that either then already or in the intervening time has been reorganized away, meaning that another fork won the block race or longest chain rule race.
But how does that get solved by having a full node?
Excuse me. Um, if you're running a full node, you can still get fooled. Well, you can still temporarily live on a fork that will end up being reorganized away. The point is, if you're not running a full node, then you're not even performing that check, and so you're not even um, the attack proceeds as follows. You're presenting a view of the blockchain without needing to participate in the consensus mechanism to convince your counterparty that this view is authentic. So the TV thief would not need to be running a mining farm in order to convince the shop salesman that his transaction is authentic. But if the shop salesman were running a full node, he would at least be verifying that the block's hashes are smaller than their difficulties. And so, in order to fool that salesman, the thief would need to run a mining farm.
But in practice, this is not what I mean. I've seen people, let's say, pay at a counter for a beer with Bitcoin, and then maybe the shop owners is waiting until like a couple of minutes until it's confirmed or whatever, and that's it. So what risk are they running?
If they're not waiting until it's confirmed, then they're then it's actually possible to replace that Bitcoin transaction by one that pays a higher fee and sends the Bitcoins involved back to the
And so
proper
let's
owner.
let's say they wait until it's confirmed.
But they're not running a
Right.
full node. That means that what is confirmed and what isn't is the answer comes from some other full node living on the network.
Hmm.
And if the beer consumer controls that full node, he can convince the beer salesman that the transaction was confirmed when it wasn't.
But he's getting that answer from one other full node, or is he?
In practice, yes, but in principle, you could sample multiple full nodes and then discover very rapidly if they disagree.
Interesting. And so when you do transactions, you try to go through your own full node, or how does that work?
I actually tried to use Lightning, which is another mechanism to counteract this weakness, because in Lightning it takes a while to open channels and close them, but when the channel is open, you can confirm it instantly, and there's a much smaller risk of being fooled in the moment. The risk shifts to some indeterminate later point where you close your channel. And in fact, you might close it with some some other individual, some other party, someone who might be more trustworthy or who might be in the business of opening Lightning channels. Um, So it would have a different risk profile there as opposed to taking payments from random
Mm.
people who come to your shop to drink a beer.
Right, and maybe jumping off of Lightning, that could be one of those dimensions that for a user of a cryptocurrency, they think, how quickly can I transact? When I transact, do I need to wait, 5 minutes before I can be certain that it's transferred, or is it instant, like it's with Lightning, if I understand correctly? And so, how do you score there? Do you have your own Lightning channel? How does that work?
My Bitcoin full node has Lightning channels.
With Neptune.
Uh, we are very enthusiastic about not Lightning, but developing Lightning is later on the roadmap. So we first plan to launch with on-chain transactions only, and then we'll build Lightning. But it's definitely on the roadmap. And so people often wonder what's the transaction per second. TPS per second is what they always ask, and the answer is once you have Lightning, it really doesn't matter anymore, um, because one transaction is no longer competing with another transaction for scarce blockchain space, and so in principle you could support an unlimited number of transactions per second.
And are these just like sending coins from one address to the other, or could these also be, let's say, smart contract states that get transferred?
It could be smart contract states, but smart contracts are useful in part because the state is public and replicated. And so if you try to move a smart contract to Lightning, it's definitely entirely possible, um, but you have to find a clever solution to the state problem, which Ethereum solves by making every node reproduce it. And that might be erring off too far on the other side, but it's probably a contributing factor to Ethereum's apparent success. Um, it makes it a lot easier for people to engage in smart contracts because the information they need to engage with those smart contracts is already there.
And what's the trade-off they're making?
That it's a whole bunch of data.
But doesn't that just get abstracted away with ZK Starks?
No, because if you want to update disparate locations in this database, those two updates cannot be independent. They have to be sequential. And yeah, that puts every single transaction into a huge funnel, which is not good for scalability.
So what needs to be sequential?
The state updates. So yes, you can compress your huge database into a short cryptographic commitment. And yes, you can prove that you updated this cryptographic commitment authentically, but you cannot update it twice in parallel.
Gotcha. So they got a throughput issue there.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting. So getting back to those three dimensions that we talked about initially, we've got the sort of quantum resistance, we've got privacy and scalability. So we talked a bit about the quantum resistance. So I had a thought about that because when we were talking about the risk of the quantum computer coming into existence, you put that on, I think, about 1%, if I'm not mistaken. And so
probability, right?
Probability.
Risk is probability times impact.
Right. So the probability. So that's quite high. And if I look at some of the more famous names, let's say in the Bitcoin space, that we're very happy to be there and to get other people in, they speak with a certain level of confidence that that doesn't match a 1% probability that there's a huge, you know, turmoil in the market. Um, so it's yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Um, I guess my 1% is a rather arbitrary number, probably informed by my PhD topic, which was post quantum cryptography. I think other people put lower and higher numbers on that event.
Let me ask it slightly differently. Like, are you um, do you see Bitcoin's success as like pretty much a sure thing? Like it's very, nothing can go wrong, or is it more like no, this is 1%, and maybe some other scenarios that can really turn things completely on its head?
Um, I don't think it's a sure success, but I do think it's the best option right now. Um, no, I think quantum computers turn Bitcoin's dominance on its head completely. Um, there might be other scenarios. I think smart contracts are useful. The question here is, can smart contracts pertain to real world objects? And I don't think they can unless there is a state somewhere that enforces smart contracts as they pertain to real world objects. So you could tokenize your farm, but unless there's a police who actually enforces this token, it grants the holder the right to control this farm, um, it's just a worthless piece of not even paper. But once this policeman is there, then you have a very different dynamic, and then I think smart contracts can be hugely beneficial for the economy that adopts them. And I don't think Bitcoin can support that use case, at least not currently. Maybe in the future, conceivably it can, but it would be a very, very controversial change. And I think this is a quantum leap in features that could enable a competitor to catch up with the network effect advantage that Bitcoin has.
Interesting. Okay.
And then another feature that is a quantum leap of difference, I think, is privacy. Um, I think it was Balaji the other day. He wrote a longer Twitter article, but embedded in that Twitter post was the prediction that governments at some point will say that Bitcoin is too important to be left to the hands of individuals, which is a very subtle way of saying that they'll find clever ways to ban it. In that world, in order to evade the bans, you need on-chain privacy. And so, depending on how the future evolves, if Balaji's vision of the future is correct, then I think privacy will play a bigger role, and that might be another quantum leap feature that allows a competitor to overtake Bitcoin.
Right. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to mention on those three dimensions that we talked about?
I'd say that Bitcoin is already doing pretty good on the scalability front because of its pioneering of Lightning. Lightning is, in my eyes, the correct way to do scaling on a blockchain, and Bitcoin is paving the way there. Uh, it does not have state compression. It does not have history compression or proof aggregation, and those are fancy contributors to scalability. But I think the biggest contributor to scalability they've already gotten right.
And as you said, you plan to implement something similar with Neptune.
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool.
And by the way, since we expect reasonably that it's going to require very light resources to run both Neptune and Neptune on Lightning, everyone who's already running a Bitcoin node, they might as well also run a Neptune node
Interesting.
because it's not going to cost that much extra.
And people that run a node, how does that? They download the software from Neptune, or how does that typically work?
They download the software from GitHub, compile and install it, and then run it.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Anything we should talk about next week?
I don't know. Let's see where what catches our attention and our fancy in the meantime.
Fair enough.
Maybe we should start the tradition of summarizing developments in the last week at
Yep.
the start of the podcast.
We could do that, yeah.
But let's start with that next week.
Okay, fair enough. All right.